3 days into his new job, the Roman governor Festus went up to Jerusalem, and there the Jewish elders met up with him, making the request to have the imprisoned Paul transferred back to Jerusalem. They were plotting to ambush Paul and kill him en route, but Festus said there was no point in having Paul brought to Jerusalem since he himself was on his way back to Caesarea, and he told the elders that if they wanted to press charges, they needed to come to him. About half a month or so later, the elders appeared before Festus in Caesarea and laid out their accusations against Paul, but they were unable to prove anything they said. Then Paul made his defense. "I have done nothing wrong against the Jewish law, or against the temple, or against Caesar." Festus wanted to do a favor for the Jews and asked Paul if he was willing to go up to Jerusalem and stand trial there. Paul knows that this is a trap, and he calls everyone out, saying, "I'm standing in Caesar's court right now. This is where I ought to be tried. I haven't done anything wrong to these Jews, and if I were deserving of death, I would accept my punishment. But since these Jews are liars, I refuse to be handed over to them. I appeal my case to Caesar himself." After Festus had conferred with his council, he agreed to send Paul to Caesar. A few days later, King Agrippa, aka Herod Agrippa I, and Bernice, his royal sister, arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Governor Felix. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king, and Agrippa wanted to hear Paul for himself. The next day, Festus had Paul brought in to speak with Agrippa and Bernice in front of an audience of nobles. Paul tells Agrippa how pleased he is to have the king's ear, since Agrippa was familiar with all of the Jewish customs and controversies. He then goes on to tell the king the story of how he had been raised a Pharisee, and how this whole controversy he had found himself in was a debate on the idea of resurrection, which was not a new debate and nothing to freak out about. He tells the king how he persecuted the followers of Jesus, but that Jesus himself appeared to him with a blinding light on the road to Damascus, saying, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads." The line about kicking against the goads is unique to this retelling of Paul's conversion experience. It refers to a device that helps to keep an animal on a straight path instead of wandering off. Paul is comparing himself to a stubborn animal who ultimately finds it pointless to resist the guidance of his master. Paul then says that he obeyed God and preached the gospel message all over the Roman Empire to both Jews and Gentiles, saying that what Moses and the prophets predicted had come true, that the Messiah would suffer, and as the first to rise from the dead, would bring the message of light to his own people and to the Gentiles. At this point, Festus interrupted Paul's defense, accusing him of insanity, and Paul tells the governor that he is not insane and that he is only speaking of what is considered common knowledge among the Jews, and he says that King Agrippa understands what he's talking about. Paul then asks, "King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know you do." Then Agrippa said to Paul, "Do you think that in such a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian?" Paul replied, "Short time or long, I pray to God that not only you but all who are listening to me today may become what I am, except for these chains." After they left the room, they began saying to one another that Paul deserved neither death nor prison, and Agrippa says to Festus that he could have set Paul free had he not appealed to Caesar.